My nightmare drive became a terrifying chase after I heard the unsettling yapping behind me. I never should have opened that door. The evening started like any author mundane drive home, the radio buzzing with my favorite tunes. Alone in my car, the weight of the world felt distant. But then, darkness crept in. The roads twisted, the trees loomed like black sentinels. I could feel the chill seep through the windows, wrapping around me like a deceptive embrace. And then, that yapping. It pierced the silence, a frantic, desperate sound that rattled my nerves. I glanced in the rearview mirror, heart pounding. Nothing but shadows. I should have felt relief, but the unease settled deeper. My gut screamed, something was off. The road twisted ahead, a ribbon of asphalt swallowed by thick fog. The air was damp, heavy with the smell of wet leaves and decay. An odd sensation prickled at the back of my neck. I was being watched. I turned the radio down, straining to listen. The yapping grew louder, more urgent, echoing in the night. It was like something was chasing me. I pressed the gas pedal, the engine roaring like a caged beast. Shadows flicked by, trees morphing into grotesque figures. Suddenly, I swerved as a dark shape dashed across the road. My breath hitched. I barely regained control of the wheel. What the hell was that? I muttered to myself, dread curling in my stomach like a living thing. The yapping persisted, relentless, growing closer. I could feel my pulse drumming in my ears, panic washing over me. My fingers trembled on the steering wheel. I had to get away, but the road only seemed to stretch farther into the unknown. Out of nowhere, a figure darted into my peripheral vision. I caught a glimpse, something low to the ground, formatted, eyes glinting in the dark like tiny stars. My heart slammed against my chest. I stomped on the gas, the car hurtled forward. Freezing air rushed in through the open window, a bitter reminder of the chaos swirling around me. With each twist and turn, the yapping echoed, a soundtrack to my fear. I couldn't shake the feeling of being entrapped, cornered like prey. My world shrank to the confines of the headlights, everything else swallowed by shadow. I focused ahead, but every flick of the mirror showed that figure, now close enough that I could see its gnashing teeth, its eyes filled with a primal hunger. Just then, an eerie silence fell. My breath caught in my throat. I could almost hear my own heartbeat, pounding against the suffocating quiet. And then, as if summoned by my fear, it appeared, a hulking shadow on the side of the road. It stood there, still as death, silhouetted against the dim glow of my headlights. My heart raced. I skidded to a stop, the tires screeching in protest. The silence shattered as it lunged forward, snapping jaws glistening under the flickering lights. I wasn't alone anymore. And then a scream. My scream. The darkness swallowed everything as the world spun around me. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The scream hung in the air, a desperate wail that skittered across the darkened landscape like a wounded animal. Heart racing, I slammed the car door shut with trembling hands, eyes wide as I stared into the oppressive void outside. The headlights cast a narrow beam, barely illuminating the monstrous form that lurked just beyond the reach of the light. A grotesque silhouette crouched low, muscles rippling under a coat matted with dirt and leaves. I could see its chest heaving, breaths heavy and labored, as it observed me, head cocked to one side, making it look grotesquely inquisitive. I shivered, the sensation of being dissected by those predatory eyes making my stomach churn. The yapping returned not from behind me, but from the darkness ahead. Another voice entwining with the first, a cacophony of hungry cries that sent a chill racing down my spine. The car felt like a fragile bubble suspended in a world warping with dread. I couldn't simply sit here, numbed by terror. I had to escape. I fumbled in the darkness for my keys, fingers shaking against the metal as adrenaline coursed through me. With a sudden jolt, the electric hum of the engine reawakened, slicing through the thick silence, but the creature seemed unfazed, its attention fixed firmly on me. Then, without warning, a whistle pierced the night, a shrill sound that momentarily silenced the yapping. My breath caught as the creature's ears perked, an unsettling awareness sparking a primal instinct in its gaze. It was as if it had been trained, compelled by that baleful call. Another bark joined the chorus, a deep, guttural growl that emanated from the trees, leading me to question how many lurked in the shroud of darkness around me. Was this a pack? Had I unwittingly driven into their territory? With an urgency that bordered on madness, I threw the car into gear, tires spinning briefly in treacherous gravel before gripping the asphalt. I shot forward, but the fog thickened, swallowed the light, and the world outside warped into a swirl of pale shapes and shadows. The trees shifted, arching menacingly as if trying to ensnare my vehicle in their gnarled branches. The yapping chased me, an echoing nightmare that pulsed rhythmically like a taunt. Suddenly, something hard thumped against the car, a yelp, followed by another anguished bark, filled the Karen impact that sent jolts of fear shooting through me. Instinctively, I spun around, checking the rearview mirror, and froze at in that fleeting moment. I saw a mass of fur and malice, dozens of glimmering eyes reflecting the moonlight, each one fixated on me, their shapes boiling together in a frenzy. It was a stampede of shadows, a pack fragmented but coherent, an unholy celebration of predation. They dashed alongside me, snarling, their growls melding into a howl, urging the beast in front of me to pursue. No longer just a figure of dread, the creature I had spotted became more defined, horrifyingly so. It was larger than a wolf, with contorted limbs and a muzzle too long, revealing jagged teeth that glistened with something darker than mere saliva. I could see its skeletal outline, the angles of its body stark against the dense fog, and the deep-set eyes, gleaming with a sinister intelligence that chilled my bones. Just as everything within me screamed to press the pedal to the floor, a twisted shape veered into the road ahead, impossible to predict. A child. A small figure with frail limbs and hair that draped like cobwebs, standing there, eyes wide and unblinking. "Help me!" The voice rang out, warped and hollow, draping over me like a shroud. The words came from nowhere and everywhere, echoing in the confines of my mind, leaving me teetering between reality and madness. My foot hovered over the brake, conflict surging within me. A moment's hesitation that could seal my fate. But before I could respond, the pack surged forward, teeth flashing with unholy urgency. The unspeakable horror of their pursuit struck me. His was not just a chase, it was a hunt. The child, a mere illusion or bait, somehow locked in this nightmare. Called out for salvation just as I fought to escape it. The moment stretched endlessly as tension spiraled, and I made my choice. My heart pounded as I veered away from the grasping hands of the bazaar. It was the last decision I would ever get to make. That a deafening crash echoed, the air shattered with a sickening sound, as the child vanished into the encroaching fog. All lights blinked out, and the terrifying chorus of yapping diminished into silence. I could only feel the weight of dread hanging over me, a darkness no longer tethered to reality. And then came the laughter. A soft, chilling giggle that floated through the fog, inhuman, mocking, and echoing all around. The car's headlights flickered, the engine sputtered, struggling to contain the rising tide of despair. The world whispered promises of salvation that twisted into malevolent threats, and as the engine finally succumbed, my heart sank under the weight of the encroaching shadows. That enveloping black, where the laughter blended with the faintest cries, I realized I had become part of their game, a hunted soul bound to the very darkness I tried to flee. A new sound now joined the yapping, a symphony of anguished voices, and as the laughter grew, I felt the weight of eyes upon me, insatiable, closing in. And in the ethereal silence that followed, I understood the hunt had only just begun. The fog swirled thicker now, as if it had a will of its own, obscuring the ghostly shapes that danced across my vision. Heart pounding a frantic rhythm, I grasped the steering wheel, knuckles white as I fought the urge to scream. Something primal within me wrestled for dominance, fight or flight, a clash that reverberated in the shadows around me. The laughter echoed through the chaos, a haunting melody that wrapped around my mind like ivy suffocating a tree. As I fumbled for the door handle, every nerve ending screamed to escape, but the car was my fragile sanctuary, a cocoon in a world turned grotesque. I dared to peek outside, tensing as the silhouette of the creature I had only glimpsed before lurked just beyond the reach of my headlights. It was as if I could almost feel its breath, hot and rancid, an invisible caress of death that I flicked the high beams on, a desperate act, illuminating the immediate path in front of me. Shadows knifed around the edges of that faint light, darting like phantoms as they danced and twisted in the corners of my vision. A new urgency pierced through the atmosphere, the laughter sharpened, rising into a cacophony that bled into the air until it felt like an entity unto itself, vibrating with glee at my terror. A low growl rumbled from beneath the car, and the engine trembled in response, as if it too sensed the danger creeping closer. Panic surged through me anew. Was this the end? An inescapable grip of clawed fury poised to drag me into unimaginable depths. Then, abruptly, the laughter transformed into a chorus of voices, indistinct yet familiar, a cacophony of the lost echoing across the void. It was a symphony of despair, my own name, drawn out like a mournful chant, mingled with the cries of others. Each syllable resonated with their agony, each inflection a reflection of their torment, a gut-wrenching reminder that I was not alone in this nightmare. "They won't let you go," came the sudden whisper, chilling as frost that slithered into my mind. I froze, paralyzed, as a face materialized in the mist, familiar yet twisted, someone I loved once, someone lost to this very darkness. "You're part of the hunt now," it said, the words slithering through my thoughts like smoke. It felt all too real, a specter of past love entwined with horror, a cruel reminder of the cost of my flight. Fingers trembling uncontrollably, I jerked my head to the right. Through the fog, I glimpsed figures weaving through the trees, children, faces twisted in mute anguish, their eyes wide with terror. They reached toward me, fingers clawing at the air, mouths opened in silent screams, as if begging for release from the hell they were trapped in, pulling me deeper into the abyss. I screamed aloud, a primal sound that cut through the chaos, and my foot slammed down on the accelerator again. The car shot forward like a rocket, darting between the trees that loomed like ancient sentinels. The headlights flickered erratically, revealing glimpses of the grotesque pack alongside me, their eyes glimmering with insatiable hunger. I could feel them multiplying, an expanding sea of malice that surged with every rev of the engine, but in that quantum of speed, a shadow ripped across the hood, vast and undulating, something far larger than before, snapping and bounding with lethal elegance. A figure cleared the trees, agile and rooted somehow in a malevolence that nearly made me succumb to despair. I glimpsed its face, a twisted amalgamation of human and beast. It bore no expression, but I could feel its hunger creeping under my skin. Focusing back on the road, I saw a glimmer of hope, a break in the trees, an opening where perhaps salvation awaited. I raced toward it, heart thundering, but just as I approached, the ground beneath me shifted, a pit, dark and unfathomable, yawned wide into the fog. I slammed the brakes, tires shrieking against the asphalt, but it was too late. The car lurched forward, the ground collapsing beneath us, tipping toward the abyss. As I plunged into darkness, time stretched and twisted, I felt weightless, suspended in fear. My gaze was drawn upward, and there it hovered, eyes glinting above me, watching with sadistic curiosity as the laughter returned, more fervent and wicked than before. And then I was falling, swallowed by an everlasting night, and surrounded by voices chanting my name in unison, a grotesque choir welcoming me to the depths. But one phrase echoed above the rest, echoing inside my scattered mind: "You chose the wrong path to escape." Before I hit the darkness below, the fleeting thought struck me: Muhat lay beneath those depths. What awaited the hunted, twisted by my choices? And as the laughter crescendoed in macabre delight, a final, terrifying realization dawned: I was not merely slipping away, I was heading towards something waiting eagerly in the shadows. And with that, snapped the tether of understanding, plunging me into a reality where the game had no end. The impact was softer than I anticipated. For a moment, there was silence, an eerie stillness that hung heavy around me, suffocating and unreal. I squirmed, my body an anchor pinned in place by an overwhelming dread, feeling the chill seep through my skin as I lay on something damp and unyielding. It was the ground, but not beneath the car as I expected. No, I had fallen far, far beyond that. As I pushed myself upright, the faint remnants of the fog curled around me, a shroud of malevolence that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. The cacophony of laughter had diminished to an ominous whisper, echoing through the shadows that loomed like hungry beasts awaiting their prey. I was enveloped in darkness, and it thrummed with a disquieting energy that set my teeth on edge. My breaths had become shallow gasps, the air thick and stale, soaked in long-forgotten despair. Struggling to find my footing, I quickly assessed my surroundings. I was in a narrow ravine, a space that felt impossibly confined, with walls rising like jagged teeth against a pale backdrop of moonlight filtering through the dense branches above. The darkness loomed in the corners, twisting and writhing as if it breathed, reaching out like tendrils towards me. The very earth beneath felt alive, contracting and expanding in response to my fear. With trembling hands, I checked my body. Nothing seemed broken, but the weight of something heavier than flesh bore down on me. I scanned the area, searching for a means to escape this surreal nightmare. That was when I noticed them, the tiny voices flitting at the periphery of my vision. Flickering movement caught my eye, and I dared to glance toward the source. Children. Their faces were smeared with dirt, confusion twisted into their features, eyes wide and unseeing. They recoiled as if repulsed by an unseen force. There were too many of them, too many to count. They stood enraptured, captivated by something beyond comprehension. Their hands gripped the air, stretching toward me, imploring me with silent pleas that resonated with the deepest dread I had yet known. And then behind them a manifestation emerged from the other end of the ravine, gliding toward me with a grace that belied its grotesque form. It was a creature, hauntingly familiar, and yet it felt impossibly wrong, a warped echo of what it should have been. Clad in shadows, its elongated limbs swayed as it crept forward, its sickeningly human-like face contorted in a grin that was nothing short of malevolent. This was my punishment, I realized, me sins personified. You brought them into this, it whispered, the sound thick with malice, wrapping around me until I could feel the chill gnawing at the edges of my mind. The children flickered, then momentarily fused into a single figure, then dissolved back into the mob of lost souls. Their cries surged against me, an ebbing tide of grief and horror, as if they were calling for me to understand their suffering, to join them in their eternal torment. I stumbled backward, the wall pressing against my back, but there was nowhere to run. The creature lifted a slender finger, its gaze locking onto mine with unyielding intensity. The children turned, eyes glowing like pinpricks of light, reflecting the same hunger that emanated from the beast. You could save them. Choose, it crooned, as its fingers twisted themselves into cruel shapes, the shadows morphing and twisting like a dancer in a dreadful ballet. You could lead them back, or you could abandon them to my embrace. Their fate is tied to yours. Choose wisely. Desperation clawed at me as I stood frozen, heart hammering against my ribs, threatened by a curse of complicity. Each heartbeat echoed the dreadful laughter that swirled in the background, feeding off my fear, my uncertainty. The weight of their torment pressed upon me, I could feel it, like chains tightening around my chest, yet even as dread morphed into desperation, a primal instinct surged to the forefront. I knew I had to break free, had to escape the snare, a way out of this hell, but at what cost? Who would pay? As I prepared to scream, hoping against hope that my voice could pierce the fabric of this nightmarish reality, the creature lunged forward, mouth agape, revealing a void where a tongue lashed like a serpent. Choose the right path or perish, it hissed, echoing like thunder in a cavern. With an unexpected surge of power, I turned towards the children, tears of desperation blurring my vision as I reached out to the darkness. But at that very moment, a piercing shriek filled the air, a horror that fractured the night. Behind me, the shadows rippled, shifting like a storm. The darkness was no longer static, it was alive, embracing forms of unspeakable terror that surged toward us, and then an unnerving realization clawed through the fog of shock. The creature, the children, everything around me began to dissolve, like the ephemeral nature of a waking dream. The choice I had to make hung suspended in time, as new horrors emerged from the dark vaults of despair. What sinister fates awaited those who fell into this twisted game? I had crossed too far into their world, and now as the echoes of lost souls drowned out even the light of dawn, I realized too late that the real nightmare was yet to come. As the shadows coalesced around me, I sensed something far worse looming, its implacable hunger already set to devour. The last breath of the night whispered a single question to my heart: would I be the next to hunt or be hunted? I stumbled, feeling the crushing weight of the encroaching darkness spiral around me. The fetid stench of decay as the shadows thickened overwhelmed my senses. My breath came in ragged gasps, each exhale mingling with the echoing cries of the children, their sorrow entwined with the sinister laughter. They swirled in a haze of blackness with the creature at the center, as if tethered to it by an unseen thread of anguish. Then, from the depths of that suffocating gloom, I heard it an unsettling yapping, like some wild animal frantically clawing its way through the black. It droned through the air, rising and falling in a discordant melody that sent chills dancing up my spine. I turned, only to face a swirling mass of endless night with shadows writhing in anticipation, and my heart raced as the sound grew louder, closer. That I had no choice but to move, driven by instinct as my body propelled me forward into the unknown. The ravine seemed to ripple and twist, leading me deeper into the dark tunnel of despair. I slipped and stumbled over unyielding roots and grime-coated stones, the yapping now mingling with the cries of the children, forming a cacophony that was almost unbearable. Suddenly, a flash of movement caught my eye, darting past me like a wisp of wind. It was one of the children, their face pale and expression haunted, eyes wide with terror and desperation. They turned toward me, their small mouth moving in silent horror as the yapping grew more insistent, echoing like a warning bell. "What are you doing? Don't!" The child's words vanished as something from the depths of the shadows lunged, its maw gaping wider than any creature I could fathom. I could only catch a glimpse of jagged teeth before the shadows snatched the child away, the yapping transforming into a guttural roar that vibrated through the air. A sickening sense of dread washed over me as I sprinted forward, the walls of the ravine pressing in, growing thinner, suffocatingly close. The chase was relentless, an insatiable darkness bending reality itself as it gripped at my heels, the ominous yapping transforming into a sinister cadence that taunted my every move. It felt as if the very essence of fear had carved its way into the shadows, manifesting in a grotesque pursuit where my own shadow seemed to stretch and reach out, willing me to turn and confront the terror behind me. A distorted figure materialized from the darkness. The creature twisted and contorted, its elongated limbs shifting as it wrapped around itself, several more mouths sprouting along its form, all yapping in a frenzy, their eyes glinting like shards of glass. The very fabric of this place trembled in anticipation, as if the shadows were preparing to swallow me whole if I faltered. Desperation surged, and I pressed onward, heart pounding against the cage of my ribs. I couldn't look back, couldn't let the creeping dread take root in my mind, but the shrill yapping seemed to ricochet against the walls of my consciousness, casting echoes of doubt and fear that whispered unfathomable truths. As I stumbled into the heart of the ravine, a clearing emerged, drenched in an eerie silvery glow that shone through the blanket of night. The sight was jarring. There stood an ancient tree, gnarled and twisted, its roots sprawling like the fingers of the dead. A thrumming pulse emanated from it, a heartbeat resonating through the air. The children's faces materialized in the light, contorted in a silent scream, mouths wide open as if reiterating a plea for rescue. Without thinking, I launched myself toward the tree, convinced that if I could reach it, I might find sanctuary among its scarred branches. Just as I grasped the rough bark, a force slammed into my back, knocking the breath from my lungs. I was thrown to the ground, splatters of mud and earth on my face as I rolled onto my back and locked eyes with the creature's grotesque form looming above me. It leaned in, grinning wider than should have been possible, each maw emitting that horrid yapping, a chorus of taunts tainting the air. "You cannot escape," it hissed, its breath hot and rancid. "You are bound to them, just like they were bound to you." Panic flared, and in a raw surge of adrenaline, I scrambled away, grasping desperately for the roots of the ancient tree. The oppressive energy it radiated swelled in response to my touch, thrumming like an old heartbeat, promising strength and solace. Even as the shadows closed in, the ground quaked beneath me, and as I pulled myself to my feet, I turned in defiance, facing the creature's ravenous maw. "I won't let them go. You are nothing but a monster," I shouted, the sound ringing through the ravine, reverberating against the walls that seemed to constrict around me. but in that moment, the shadows twisted, lunging forward, pulling me in different directions. I felt the grip of the children reaching for me, a ghostly tug that strained against my will, begging for release, while the creature's laughter echoed like thunder, churning the very fabric of reality around us, and then a bright light erupted from the heart of the tree, blinding and pulsing with an ancient power that flooded the ravine with a trembling energy. I shielded my eyes but was forced to confront the truth of my own actions as the children's screams twisted into yelps of joy and terror, reflecting their desperate hope and anguish all at once, that I could finally see what lay beneath the creature's shadow, the very essence of my life intertwined with theirs. But the question lingered now, palpable and terrifying: if I saved them, what would I become? How many lives would be lost in my wake? And worse yet, who truly haunted the edges of this dark place? Realization swept over me just as the light exploded, a dawning terror composing the final words that filled the air with dread. The shadows convulsed as they turned their attention to the source of the illumination, and just as I pieced together the substance of my fate, the light flickered and vanished in an instant, plunging me into darkness once more. In that silence, a new sound crept into existence. The yapping intensified, now accompanied by a sinister whisper that materialized behind me. "You've made your choice. Now face the consequences." And as the world around me began to unravel, I knew I had little time left to decide, for the darkness hungered, and now, it was my turn to be hunted. The darkness surged forward, a living entity filled with a hunger that mirrored my own rising panic. The faded whispers around me morphed into laughter, cruel and piercing, echoing relentlessly in the void. I turned, torn between the promise of safety and the suffocating grasp of despair. In that moment of hesitation, the creature lunged again, its form a chaotic ballet of limbs and mouths, each maw snapping hungrily as it darted toward me. Terrified, I bolted, relying on adrenaline to carry me through the treacherous gloom. The ancient tree loomed behind me like a sentinel, its roots twisted in agony, as if they too felt the insatiable thirst for freedom from this torment. The yapping intensified, transforming from a chaotic chorus into a singular, fanged whisper that pulsed like a heartbeat. Frantic breaths escaped my lips, mingling with the tension in the air, a palpable dread that clung to every fiber of my being. I darted left, narrowly avoiding a shadowy tendril that lashed out, grazing my arm, pain igniting in its wake. "Run!" I could hear the children's voices woven into the fabric of the shadows, each cry dripping with desperation. They echoed warnings I couldn't afford to ignore, guiding my frenzied escape while the creature's mouth shrieked garbled words of torment, a mocking mantra of despair. "You will be one of us." As I sprinted, every step sent tendrils of darkness trailing behind, burrowing into my heels as if eager to pull me back into the depths. The landscape contorted, alive and shifting, leading me through a maze where hope and horror twisted together. But instinct drove me to the gnarled roots of the tree, a serene bastion amid the chaos. It pulsed softly now, the remnants of that blinding light still bathing it in an ethereal glow. Desperation clawed at my chest as I threw myself toward it, reconnecting with the ancient power that thrummed beneath my fingertips. I could feel its pulse in time with my own heartbeat, an aching resonance that spoke of sacrifice and salvation. Would it protect me? Or would it be another cruel trick in this nightmare? But the creature was relentless. Its yapping crescendoed into a chorus of tormented souls, the cries of the children, echoing through a labyrinth of darkness. "You cannot hold them. You must choose." Each word slashed through the air, their timbre a haunting reminder of the lives caught in this malevolent web. My breath caught as I grappled with the weight of my choices. I had come here to save them, yet the shadows sought to sever that bond. Planting my feet, I screamed into the void, defiance venomous and raw, "I will not abandon you." In reply, the creature lunged forward, crashing into me with the force of a tidal wave, rolling me into the mud. The world spun as shadows enveloped me, each touch a bitter promise of oblivion. I felt the children's ghostly fingers grasp at me from beyond, an agonizing tug that threaded through my heart and spirit. The creature enveloped me fully, darkness rushing into my mouth, choking my cries as I gasped for breath. "Give in!" it howled, plunging me deeper into despair, where hope was a thin veneer that threatened to shatter. My mind reeled, caught in the undertow of despair, drowning in whispered confessions of hopelessness. With a final surge of will, I pushed against the crushing weight of the creature. All my thoughts crystallized into one singular attack against the shadows. The ancient tree flared to life beside me, its energy responding to my desperate scream, illuminating the darkness with ember-like hues. I closed my eyes, envisioning the children's faces, their pain more unbearable than my OWN.NO. I shouted, and in that moment, something shifted. The shadows recoiled, a searing heat radiating through me, igniting a flicker of courage that had long been quashed. Reality trembled, the chaos stalling as the creature writhed in confusion, its snarls turning into confused yelps. With an undulating roar, I drew upon the light's power, channeling all the anguish and longing into a Biakona surge of desperate hope that radiated through the darkness. It erupted, casting away the oppressive blackness, searing through the depths of despair surrounding me, but as the flash of illumination broke through, so did an unexpected silence. The creature dissipated into wisps of shadow, yet behind that silence lay another sound, an ominous whisper that slithered from the depths of the remaining dark. "I won't let them go," it spat, a mockery filled with venomous promise, "but you are free to stay," and with that final statement, the ground beneath me opened, the roots of the ancient tree snaking their way, reaching for my legs. I stumbled, horror stripping away the remnants of hope as the abyss yawned wide, a yawning maw of insatiable darkness beckoning. As I fell, the laughter returned, rich and sinister, echoing in my ears. The roots entwined, pulling me deeper into the shadows toward a fate woven with suffering. In that excruciating descent, with terror blooming in my chest, I could only wonder one terrifying truth: in my fervor to save them, had I sealed my own doom? The sensation of being pulled deeper into the void was indescribable, the roots wrapping around my ankles like iron shackles, tearing at my will to fight. Panic surged anew as I kicked and twisted, my screams swallowed by the relentless darkness. It warped and whispered, the last remnants of defiance echoing like fragile glass shattering against concrete. As I plummeted, I felt the ground give way beneath me, a suffocating pit opening to consume me whole. Shadows enveloped my senses, a cocoon of despair that muted my frantic heartbeat. It wasn't long before I landed in a twisted heap, disoriented and breathless, in a chamber utterly void of light save for phantom flickers that danced along the edges, hints of something lurking just beyond comprehension. Time ceased to exist, minutes curled into themselves like autumn leaves. I lay there, heartsick and trembling, trying to grasp the remnants of my escape. The roots seemed to have faded, their coldness now replaced by a damp chill that seeped deep into my bones. I steadied my breath, listening intently for clues, for signs of life, and the laughter faded to an unsettling silence, thick and oppressive. Then came the soft rustle, the slithering sound of something moving just beyond the dim glow. My heart raced as I felt my instincts scream for self-preservation, urging me to crawl backward, to flee into the shadows that had briefly shielded me. But curiosity, that damned human affliction, compelled me to inch closer to the movement. "Hello." My voice quaked, tremulous against the silence, a defiant challenge against whatever haunted this abyss. In reply, the shadows shifted, hinting at something more than disembodied sounds. A longer, shapeless figure coalesced before me, twisting as if it were comprised of liquid night. My pulse quickened, and I squinted, straining against the encroaching terror that threatened to clutch at my throat. "Ah, another lost soul," it lilted, the voice oozing malice and mockery, winding its way around me. The shape pulsated, absorbing and reflecting the faint flickers of phosphorescent light that splattered along its form. Disturbing visions of children with hollow eyes and twisted mouths filled my mind, their faces darting like shadows. "Where are they?" I choked out, desperation fueling my words. The figure chuckled, a sound sharp enough to shatter the thin veil of silence that surrounded us. "Lost? They are right here," it replied, the darkened fibers of its being stretching and contracting as it wove intricate patterns in the dark. I felt the chill seep deeper, its immense presence pressed closer, obscuring my vision with the density of despair. "You could join them," it continued, breathy and twisted, like a lover's whisper gone sour. "You yearn for their comfort, for the familiar warmth of lives once lived. Why not give in, no?" I cried, my voice an echo against the hollow chamber. The tiny embers of defiance sparked anew within me as I remembered their faces, the haunted looks of children trapped between worlds, their cries still echoing within my chest. Flashes of their desolation intertwined with my resolve, fueling a potent light that shimmered against the darkness. They need me. I shouted, my heart shaking with the conviction of my words. The figure recoiled, momentarily wavering. But they are not alone anymore, it hissed, revealing numerous tendrils that twisted and split into countless paths, a myriad of choices laid out before me, like dark mirrors reflecting every potential fate. Each thread pulsed with the echoes of those who had succumbed, the echoes of my past decisions resonating through the fabric of this nightmare, and then, the ground trembled, threatening to rupture once more, scattering reflective shards of light through the void. The children's cries intensified, a cacophony resonating with my mind, reverberating through the sheer fabric of reality. I could see them now, visages flickering in and out of focus, pleading and reaching for me, their forms warping and stretching as if they could feel the weight of despair pressing down upon me. Come back! I screamed, desperation clawing at my throat. I won't leave you. In that moment, the air thickened, transforming from doom to hostility as the entity shifted, its voice sharp as knives. Choose. It roared, unleashing a wave of engulfing darkness that swept through the chamber, threatening to bury me beneath its weight. As I steadied myself against the impending tide, the figures of the children twisted and split into two paths, each one leading into a different expanse of suffering and horror. One path shimmered with glimmers of silver light, the other was cloaked in an unsettling, gnarled weave of shadow. With the creature closing in around me, every heartbeat became a countdown. I could feel fate slip through my fingers, my resolve teetering at the precipice. Would I step into the light, hoping to save them, or plunge into the chilling embrace of darkness, choosing to fight the insidious whispers that threatened to claim us all? The choice loomed before me, each path pulsating with energy, crackling with possibility and peril. As the shadows lunged, wrestling for my soul, I gasped, heart hammering in my chest, choose. The entity howled one last time, an echoing shriek that sent frozen fingers down my spine, and with that, the ground split wide open beneath my feet. I was falling again, falling into uncertainty, flailing toward a destiny yet unwritten. As I plummeted into the chasm of fate, the air thickened with agonizing anticipation. The void quickly transformed from a chaotic symphony into a suffocating silence, the whispers of the entity and the cries of the children melding together into a haunting lullaby. I fell endlessly, gravity distorting time, each second stretching into an eternity. Just as the void threatened to swallow me whole, everything abruptly skirted to a halt. I landed violently, sprawling against something cold and unyielding that felt unexpectedly familiar. Off floor, perhaps. The jarring impact rattled my senses, ringing in my ears like a church bell tolling for the fallen. I blinked through the darkness, frantic for any glimpse of light, but the air remained stifling, thick enough to drown in. Suddenly, the sound of distant yapping broke through the oppressive atmosphere, echoing around me with dissonant cheerfulness, a chilling contrast to my despair. Unearthly yelps, punctuated by rugged breaths, grew louder, each bark edged with a primal hunger. My heart raced as I pushed myself to stand, the disorientation pulling at my limbs. What is happening? I muttered, dread gnawing at the edges of my sanity. The chamber was bare, save for the distant silhouettes that danced at the periphery of my vision, flickering in and out like dying fireflies. Whatever had followed me here, it had brought companionship, a pack of hunting beasts torn from nightmares. The yapping sharpened, harmonizing with a deep, resonant growl that shook the ground beneath me. I bolted, my feet pounding against the cold surface, desperate to escape the mounting impending threat. The growling intensified, now punctuated by a ripple of snarls and howls that raced towards me, each sound soaked in ravenous anticipation. I had become prey in a twisted game, and I could feel their eyes, hot and hungry, watching from the embracing darkness of the shadows. I turned a corner, heart racing as I rounded the barren stone walls, gasping for breath. My thoughts spun chaotic, bouncing from one horrific possibility to another. Was this the end? Would I encounter the figures of the children, lost to me forever? Or was there still hope shrouded in the silver glimmers they left behind? I skidded to a halt as I stumbled into a broad alcove, the walls closing in like a vice, spotlighting the jagged rocks that adorned its surface, each sharp edge reminiscent of the jagged teeth of beasts drawn to my scent. It was then an otherworldly howl erupted from the darkness behind me, a clarion call to whatever monsters lurked in the depths. I felt the air stir, cold and sharp with the chill of expectancy. Suddenly, beams of thick mist re-arose from the creases in the alleyway and coiled around my legs, binding me like their prey. No! I shouted in anguish, wrenching futilely against their grip, panic surging within me as the yapping became a cacophony of snarls, closing in fast. Shadows erupted around me, twisting into grotesque forms resembling hounds molded out of fears and memories long forgotten, their slick fur glistening in the flickering phosphorescent glow, snapping jaws, glinting eyes reflecting the haunting light. The air crackled with electric tension, and in that moment, grotesque shapes took form, overlapping with dreadful familiarity, the faces of lost children shrouded in moisture, their hollow eyes pleading and echoing their cries. They mirrored my horror, mouthing words I couldn't hear over the uproar of the dogs bounding forward. The mist wound tighter, and my chest constricted with the pressure of realization. Help them. Please. I screamed, though the shadows swallowed my voice whole, drowning it with more growls. It became a swarm of terror, the children lost within the clutches of this grotesque hunt, their silent whispers ricocheting in my mind like bullets. Would I abandon them? No. Hold on. I shouted, newfound determination igniting within. I surged against the mist, thrusting myself forward with sheer willpower. The constricting tendrils writhed against the force of my defiance, but I couldn't yield. There. Whispers resonated still, each word a strand of fate pulling me deeper into the heart of this vile nightmare. As I tore through the oil-curdled shadows, behind me, hell unleashed, growls morphed into rabid barks, their hunger palpable as they surged forward, disturbing the air like a storm. They lunged, snapping at my heels, bolting forth as if I were the last morsel in a feast. Raw fear ignited my instincts. I was driven by raw survival, swept up in a frantic bedlam. Then came the moment. Darkness fractured as I broke into a speck of light glimmering at the far end of the alcove, a shimmering allure beckoning with fleeting hope. As I charged towards it, the ground beneath quaked violently, staggering the unleashed monsters that scrambled behind me, growling savagely as if hell had unleashed its full fury across my terrified frame. But in that charged moment, something unthinkable happened. I felt a coldness beneath my feet, a shift that rippled like an undercurrent of despair. The light flickered, expanded, then imploded, a vortex of screaming energy that pulled me in as the scared souls coiled tighter around me. Did I succumb to the blinding surge? The world twisted and morphed, identities splintering in shockwaves of chaos until I found myself suspended in darkness again. The yapping had fallen silent, replaced only by an overwhelming void, and just as I began to make sense of this new reality, I heard Ida rasping breath right behind me and the unmistakable aching weight of eyes, watching, waiting, lurking. The growl was low, reverberating through the air, cruel and hungry. I turned slowly, a visceral dread creeping through my veins. There, just inches away, stood a harrowing figure, its maw twisted in a cruel snarl, jaws dripping with the shimmer of an unsettling echo from the past where the children once played. My heart stopped, caught in a vice of horror as a chilling thought crept into my mind. Would they join me in this dance of the damned, bound forever to this relentless nightmare? And in that moment, I knew with a gut-wrenching certainty, the hunt was just beginning. The abyss consumed all sounds but the steady thrum of my heartbeat, thundering in my ears. I could feel my pulse quickening, a frantic drumbeat echoing against the stillness that surrounded me. The oppressive shadows, pregnant with menace, seemed to regroup, coiling into tighter formations as if debating which of them would take me first. That I took a deep breath, forcing my voice out in a whisper, "Show yourself." There was a wretchedness to my own words, an echo of desperation I didn't recognize. They emerged from my throat, hollow and frail, transformed into bait for whatever horror lay in wait. Silence lingered before the darkness rippled with a breathy growl, an uneasy anticipation threaded through the very fabric of the air. It curled my stomach into knots. I felt that thick fog of malice swirl around me, whispering secrets of the lost, taunting me with the agony of battle once waged in this very place. As the shadows thickened, I stepped further into their grasp, eyes wide, searching. Just beyond my reach, fleeting tendrils danced in the gloom, fleeting remnants of what was once corporeal lost hopes perhaps, or fragmented joy. My breaths quickened, an involuntary tremor snaking up my arms, these remnants bore witness, but to what, I could not yet decipher. The ground beneath me transformed beneath the weight of quiet anxiety, patches of glistening blackness pulsed with an unsettling rhythm, reminiscent of beating hearts concealed within the earth. My legs trembled as I fought the urge to bolt deeper into the shadows. I felt the hairs along my nape rise, the entity's presence thick and smothering, that a swirling cloud of mist encircled my feet, and as I staggered backward, my knees buckling, I broke the shroud of atmosphere and stumbled into clarity. Light erupted from nothing, bathing me in a cold luminescence that offered no warmth, merely illumination of the horrors that once danced in its embrace. Caught in the sickly brightness, I glanced around. The alcove had morphed into a warped carnival ground. Ghostly silhouettes of children melded with blood-curdling moans hung ominously in the air, each face marred by an everlasting scream, eyes aglow with agony. They spun and twirled in a choreographed chaos, each repetitive movement unraveling a thread of time. Join as their voices merged into a haunting chorus, enveloping me, licking at the edges of my mind, whispering tales of laughter transformed into agony. They beckoned me with knowing glee, their faces twisted by sorrows I dared not imagine, reminiscent of the very despair that dragged me here. The games are fun for us.It gnawed at the edge of my sanity and, for a moment, I felt their truth pull at my core. The play unending but haunting. Were they urging me to continue, or warning me to flee? The glimmers of their eyes illuminated the truth. I too was a player in this macabre carnival.As I dove deeper into the fever dream, something leapt forth from the shadows with a primal Forsaea creature, warped and deformed, its body a mishmash of all that had been lost, coiling in on itself with each snarl. The air vibrated with its unnatural cadence, reverberating through me as if I were the very essence of its own tortured existence.It lunged with fierce, ravenous abandon, icy breath tracing my spine. I flinched just as it slashed past, the once familiar scent transformed into a tangible representation of death. Yet before I could react, it twisted back into the darkness, evading capture and morphing into flickering shapes that crowded my vision, swiping at the air as if waiting for my next move. Behind the veil of fragmented realities, shadows lurked, unseen players in this relentless game merely waiting for the right moment to attack. The sounds of distant yapping returned, vibrating through my bones, filling me with a surge of fear.In a final act of desperation, I turned away from the carnival of lost children. I couldn't join their endless cycle, one that seemed to consume the very life force of those trapped within it. I bolted down a path illuminated with the stolen glow of ethereal light. Flickering like dying stars above, yet I was pursued. Something quick darted behind me, teeth gnashing, breath searing like molten fire. The ground throbbed ominously with each pounding step, dragging me deeper into the madness. Ahead, a door began to manifest, awash in silvery luminescence, almost beating in rhythm with the monstrous growls surrounding me. Just as I grasped the handle, a piercing pain shot through my ankle, sharp as ice, but hot as the fires of hell. I was pulled down again, immersed in the suffocating darkness, the relentless howls drowning out my screams as I realized I was not merely fleeing. I was ensnared.It unveiled a gruesome truth. The hunt was within me, the voice of the children morphed into a haunting echo. They were calling me back, inching closer to their own demise. No longer had I escaped, but rather, had I succumbed to their dreadful fate. In that breathless moment before the abyss claimed me again, I looked for solace in the flicker of distant lights, only to find that my reflection gazed back eyes-wide, terror-stricken, for in that wavering moment, it all fell silent, and then the howling crescendo began anew, louder, framing the face of a grinning child, eyes glinting with a knowing wickedness. As reality folded around us, I was faced with the chilling realization: the hunt continues, not just for them but for me. And as the shadows wrapped tighter around my form, I understood, I was the apex predator in their world, a world where nightmares breathed alongside me. I steeled myself against the onslaught of the familiar laughter, knowing that in this unholy pact, something far worse awaited. I was becoming one of them. The door loomed closer, splintering with each anguished howl, and the darkness burst forth, leaving me only with one dread-filled thought: would I escape, or become yet another voice lost in the cacophony of despair? As the chilling laughter echoed through the twisted air, I pushed toward the light, but darkness held a tight grip on my ankle, taunting me in merciless cadence. With a jolt, I realized it was pulling me back hard. Too late, the door lashed shut behind me, leaving only the echoes of haunting peals as the shadows consumed the last vestiges of light. The grip of darkness tightened around me, and in that moment of despair, I felt a surge of memories flood my mind, images of those tormented children, faces twisted in agony, their cries a chorus echoing through my haunted soul. I screamed, a sound raw and primal, as I clawed against the unseen force enveloping me. Terrified of losing myself completely to the madness, I waged war against the visceral binding that tugged at my core, desperate to resist the weight of inevitability. Please. I won't leave you. My voice shattered the silence, but the shadows only laughed in response, a cacophony of twisted mirth that reverberated through the void, yet, beneath the laughter, something began to stir. Hope coiled weakly within me, threading its way into the fabric of despair. I remembered the tree, the ancient tree that held whispers of light. Perhaps it wasn't too late to fight for their release, to bring them back to the world of the living. As if summoned by my thoughts, the memories brightened, illuminating the path with promises of redemption. In that flickering moment, I focused on the shape of the ancient tree, my mind conjuring its gnarled roots and radiant core, and I surged forth once more through the shadows. I fought against the weight pulling me down, clawing my way toward that flicker of hope, no longer bound by mere instinct but fueled by the suffocating love I felt for those lost within this nightmare. Then, out of the entangling darkness, before me manifested the very heart of the nightmare. Figures emerged, lost souls intertwined in endless torment, children whose laughter had morphed into anguish. They twisted in writhing shadows, their hollow eyes lifting to me, bearing the weight of their heartaches like anchor chains. I saw once more the haunting familiarity of their faces, a dreadful reminder tugging at my memory. Join us, they whispered, their voices fading into a unified cry, each syllable a plea, a warning, or perhaps an invitation. The collective strength of their harmony melded together, every tortured voice pulling me into a trance where everything felt painfully tangible. Help us! I could feel that cry reverberate through my soul, piercing the veil of darkness. The laughter grew harsher, echoing in disarray as whispers coalesced into roars. They cannot be saved. You must choose. The shadows became a tempest, snarling and thrashing around me, impeding my escape, trying to pull me back into the suffocating abyss from which I had briefly emerged. I launched myself forward with newfound conviction. Defying the labyrinth of despair, I reached into the specters of lost children, grasping for their hands while feeling their cool fingers glide through mine, futile attempts to hold on. But I had to remain resolute. I will save you. I chanted desperately, forwards through the haze, summoning the light that resided in my heart, anchoring every sentiment of love and longing, every shred of will I could muster. With each inch I gained, the shadows clawed, desperately trying to touch my skin and draw me back into their eternal embrace. But I could feel the pulsating warmth of hope overtake the dense presence of darkness wrapping around me like an unbreakable bond. At last, I reached the edge of that churning tempest. The tree stood before me, a sanctuary, waiting, filled with energy and resilience. The moment my fingers brushed its bark, light burst forth, cascading through the air like a refreshing dawn breaking over the horizon. Chains of darkness that had bound the children crumbled, the howling echoes transformed into faint whispers of joy. With a loud roar, the creature sprang forth from the shadows, its grotesque form twisted and contorted in a furious frenzy, its eyes filled with rage. You will not take them. It lunged for me, jaws agape, ready to swallow my existence whole. No. I shouted, wielding the new strength that erupted from deep within. I called upon the power of the light rooted in the sacred tree, sending it forth in a blinding radiance. Brilliant beams cut through the oppressive dark, illuminating the shadows. Swirling around me until, with a deafening crack, everything fell into place. That I felt the moment of liberation. The lost children were lifted away from the dark, dissipating tendrils that had held them captive. The laughter transformed into joyous laughter echoing through the air, mingling with the warmth that surged as their souls danced toward salvation. And yet, as I stood there, breathing in the rebirth of light wrapped around me, a stark realization hit me with chilling clarity. The creature, the one who had laughed and hunted, was not gone, merely retreating into the depths of the shadows, its presence still lurking in the corners of my consciousness. It was a malevolence that would not cease to exist, an entity forever bound to me as I had pulled away from the void. I turned to the light, feeling the fleeting warmth of the children's joy surrounding me but resonating deep within me, and in that moment, the shocking understanding crystallized: I was bound to the abyss as well. Tethered as a guardian, eternally entwined with the fate of the hunted and the hunter. The shadows cloaked me again, an undeniable symphony thrumming with the chaos of the unseen, and there it was, lurking at the edges of reality, a haunting whisper curling through my mind, that subtle sense of impending dread. As the light wove in and out of focus, that laugh returned, chilling and mocking, bouncing off the shadows that twisted ever closer. They are freed, but you remain. With that, the world lurched around me, shadows beckoning as they wove their tendrils tighter, and the warmth of the lost children faded now, an echo against the pulse of darkness, forever defining my existence. The truth weighed heavy on my heart. A new fear had emerged, for as the guardian of their souls, I realized, the hunt would never truly end. And in that chilling moment, I grasped the truth of my predicament. In saving them, I had become yet another piece in the merciless game, entwined forever in the laughter of the shadows, a terrifying symphony I could never escape, knowing that sometimes the predator becomes prey, and the cycle begins anew.